Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video we're going to take a look at Tigris and Euphrates. It's a game of culture, conflict, and civilization according to the box, and that's fair. It's designed by Reiner Knizia. It's a tile-laying game taking place along the Tigris and Euphrates. Let's jump right in with a brief description of the rules, some example turns being played, and I'll finish with some closing remarks.
This is the setup for a 3-player game of Tigris and Euphrates. To set it up, you put 10 red temple tiles out on these winged beast spaces, and you put 1 treasure on top of them. You lay out the rest of the pool of victory points and assemble the monuments. There's a guide in the book to how to do it properly, but you'll notice each monument color is used 3 times. Also, you give each player 1 type of leader tokens. Each player gets 2 catastrophe tiles and 1 unification tile that they keep face up in front of themselves, and the indicator to show other players what type of guy they are. Lastly, they get 6 tiles as a hand that forms behind their screen. Some important terminology in this game is regions and kingdoms. Any group of tiles, even groups of 1, are regions. So this, for instance, would be a slightly bigger region. But as soon as a leader becomes involved, that becomes a kingdom. It can also be a kingdom with just 1 tile, like so. During a player's turn, he's going to take 2 actions. They can be the same, they can be different, but there's 4 to choose from. Position a leader, play a tile, play a catastrophe, or swap tiles. And the game ends when there's only 2 or 1 treasures left on the board at the end of a player's turn, or if at the end of a player's turn he or she's unable to refill back up to 6 cards in hand. So after you take your 2 actions, you're going to refill, and any other players who don't have enough tiles in their hand are going to refill as well. So let's go over those actions in reverse order. First, swapping a tile is exactly what it sounds like. You just discard any number of tiles, they're removed from the game, and you draw that same number. So next is playing a catastrophe. Catastrophes can go on any space on the board except those that are parts of monuments, which we'll get to, and any place containing a treasure. They also cannot go on a space with a leader, so if a leader's here, catastrophe can't go here. But they can go on top of regular tiles. And these tiles will disrupt spaces, and even if they're on an empty space, they disrupt connections. So if, for example, we had a group of this kingdom, this could divide this out. So this would now be a kingdom, and this would be a region. And the players each have 2 catastrophes, and they're in front of their screen, so everybody knows if they have played them or not. The next possible action is to position a leader, which you can do in 3 ways. One is to just take the leader and place him on the board, or to move him within the board, or to just take him back and withdraw that leader from the board. When you're positioning or moving a leader, you have to keep in mind the leader must be placed adjacent to a red temple space. They can be placed adjacent to other spaces as well, like this is totally okay. But a leader cannot be placed to connect multiple kingdoms, even if it's just that own player's kingdom. So if these tiles existed here along with this red leader and there was a green leader here, placing this leader between these would connect 2 kingdoms. So that would be an illegal play. And finally, a leader cannot be placed in the river. Even the blue leader, he's got to stay on land. Also, because leaders always have to stay adjacent to temples, so if for some reason a temple was ever turned face down or covered or removed from the game in some way, that leader would immediately be returned. Placing leaders also has the ability to cause an internal conflict. An internal conflict is when placement of a leader causes 2 leaders of the same color to be placed within a region. So if we take this example and the lion guy throws his leader here, now there's 2 green leaders in this kingdom. Oh no, so they have an internal conflict. The way an internal conflict works is it's always resolved using red tiles, even though these 2 leaders happen to be green. So the way this works is whoever placed the leader is the attacker, and the strength of the leader is dictated by the number of red tiles next to that leader. So this leader's strength is 2 red, and this leader's strength is 1 red. But the attacker gets to add more red tiles from behind his screen. So let's pretend he played 3. So now his attack power is 1, 2, 3, 4 against this bull's 2. So now the defender has the option to add more, and he decides to add 2. Defenders win ties, so in this example, 4 against 4, this player would be repelled even though he attacked. So whichever player loses takes the leader back to their area, and the winner is rewarded 1 red victory point. It's always red, irregardless of the color of the player. So the played tiles are discarded. The last and probably most common thing you're going to do in a turn is place a tile. Tiles can be placed anywhere. They can be placed next to existing tiles. Don't have to be the same color, so this is perfectly legal. Or they can be placed out in the middle of nowhere. The only exception to that really is that the blue farmers must be placed in the river. They can't be placed on land. It's important to understand that when a tile is placed in a kingdom, meaning there's at least 1 leader there, victory points may be awarded. So if this tile is placed no points are actually awarded because it depends on the color of the tile. So if the color of this tile matches the color of the leader, that leader would get 1 point. So for instance, if this bull player was here, even if the lion played this tile, this red bull would get 1 red victory point. If there was no red leader, but there were a leader specifically matching the color of the tile played, could be green, could be any other color, but there's a black leader, the black leader substitutes as that leader and gets the victory point. So in this case, this tile is played, the vases would get 1 red victory point. Finally, if there is a leader of the same color and a black, the leader of that color takes precedence. So in this example again, this guy plays this, red gets 1 victory, or pardon me, lions get 1 red victory point. The one rule with placing tiles outside of what we already discussed is a tile can never connect more than 2 kingdoms. It's perfectly okay for a tile to connect 2 kingdoms, which we are going to show right now. So when this tile is placed, let's say the lion player decides to place this tile, it scores no victory points. Whenever a tile unites 2 kingdoms, no points are given, and it's instead covered with the unification tile. And when a tile is placed, an external conflict can occur. Remember, an internal conflict can occur when a leader is placed, but now there's a kingdom that contains 2 green leaders, so they have to fight it out. There can only be 1 green leader. The way external conflicts are resolved is in the color of the leaders engaged. So in this case, it would be based on green tiles. So the green tiles on each side of the unification tile are added together. So this lion player's strength is 2, and unfortunately for this green bull, he has no strength. But it works the same way. The attacker is either the player who placed the tile, or if that player is not involved, the next players in clockwise order become the attacker. If there's multiple conflicts that occur, the player who placed the tile, the unification tile, gets to decide what order they go in. So in this case, he can add additional green tiles from behind his board, but he doesn't have any. So this player, as the defender, the bull, unfortunately only has 1. He could still play it if he likes, but he's not going to. When this is resolved, the player who wins gets 1 victory point for each leader removed and each tile removed. So if there was several green tiles over here, let's pretend that there was a whole bunch, and this guy became very powerful and discarded lots of greens. So let's just say he wins. This would be removed from the board and returned to its owner, so that's 1 green point. This would be removed, this would be removed, and this would be removed. So they're out of the game, but each one's worth a point. So this guy would actually receive 4 green victory points for doing this. It's also important to note that since a bunch of tiles can disappear at the same time this conflict occurs, future conflicts that you thought might happen may never occur. Also, any red tiles, if the fight is between external conflict between 2 red priests, and there's tiles that would be removed that have treasures on them, or the last red tile next to a leader. So for example, if these 2 red were fighting and this was the last tile next to this leader, it can't be removed. And you only get points for the tiles that are actually removed from the game. So at the end of the conflict, this is removed, and now the kingdom is together. Although it's possible it may not be if certain tiles are removed from the board. So the way monuments work is if a player places a 4th of the same color in a square, he has the option to immediately flip those over, though any conflicts would be resolved first. So then these would flip, and if there's a treasure among them, the treasure actually stays in that space. It's a little bit unusual, but it can happen. And because these were red, he has to pick one of the 3 monuments that contains a red and throws it on this space. So the way monuments work is every turn they produce points, but they only produce points for the player whose turn it is. So if it was the lion player's turn, he doesn't have any red or blue in this kingdom, so unfortunately he can't get any victory points. But if it was the vase player's turn and it was the end of his turn, he gets 1 red point because he is the leader connected to here. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any blue connected. By the way, this guy has to be removed because he's not next to red anymore. But even if he had a black in there, he can't substitute. It has to be a blue that receives the blue point from a monument. So if a player ever ends the turn with a kingdom that contains more than 1 treasure, the player owning the leader in that kingdom, or pardon me, the trader in that kingdom, the green one, gets all but 1 of those treasures. So if there's 3, for instance, he would get 2. In this case, he would get 1. So he picks one of them, he takes it, and that's essentially a wild victory point. If there is no trader, black cannot substitute. It must be a trader. And if one gets placed there later, he can certainly take it. The only rule here is if one of the 4 corner spaces is involved, that must be one of the treasures taken. So again, the game ends when there's only 2 or 1 treasures left on the board at the end of a player's turn, or when the player can't refill his hand to 6 cards. Let's get going with our example playthrough. We're going to start with the vases, and this player is first going to lay out his blue leader, and then he's going to play a blue tile in that area. Remember, that has to be played in the river because it's a farmer. So since he has a blue there, he gets 1 blue victory point. And then he draws back up to the number of to 6. For this player's turn, he's going to lay out right in the center here his black leader, and then play a green tile. Because there's no green leader, he actually gets the green victory point for that, and then he as well draws back up. We've come around to the lion player again, and he is going to get a little bit aggressive and place his lion here. Now there's an internal conflict because there's 2 black pieces. So he is the attacker, and his strength is 2. Remember, internal conflicts are always resolved with red tiles, and this guy's strength is 1. So he really wants to win this, so he's going to throw out 3 red, moving his strength up to 5. Unfortunately for the black player, he only has 1, but he's going to get rid of it as well. So with much stronger combined strength, the black guy is knocked back, or the bull guy is knocked back, and this player gets 1 red victory point. All these tiles are discarded, and he still gets to take his second action, and then both players draw back up to 6, even the bull player. It is now the bull player's turn, and he decides it's time for an external conflict. Note that even though he has a blue, he could not place it here because that would actually connect 3 separate kingdoms, and 2 is the maximum that can be connected at one time. So he's going to throw out this red tile here, and remember, no points are awarded because he has connected 2 kingdoms. Even if there was no conflict, still no points, and he covers it like so. The conflict that takes place here is between the red priests. So on this side he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 red against 3. This player doesn't feel too good about it, but he's still going to throw these 3 out there anyway, which is not enough to catch up to this guy. So this guy is the winner, and then we remove 1, 2, 3. Remember, this actually stays on the board because it has a treasure on it, so he receives 3 red victory points. He takes the unification tile off, and now he can do the second move of his turn, for which he will place a black tile here, getting 1 black victory point because he has that. And now he has a continuous kingdom that has 2 treasures in it, and he must take the one in the corner. Welcome back. It is pretty much the end of the game, and of course it is the lion player's turn. He's going to throw his leader up here, adjacent to that temple, and then he's going to play a tile here, giving this player 1 red victory point. And by the way, victory points are hidden behind your screen. I'm just doing it here to make it real easy to see the end of the game. So at the end of his turn, he is in a region that contains 2 treasures, and he is the green trader present, so he gets 1 of those treasures, and the game is going to be over because there's only 2 treasures left on the board. So before we get to the very end, we got to award points for the monuments. So this monument here gives to blue, which is the bull player. It's not his turn, and the black, so he gets 1 more point there. He also gets 1 green point from this monument up here. All the other monument points would be awarded to other players, but it's not their turn, so they don't get them right now. So the final scores are calculated very easily. They're already laid out with these nice big ones as 5. So this player has 6 red, 8 green, 4 black, and 10 blue. I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier in the video, but your score is your lowest amount. So in this case, his score would be, we're going to use these wilds to up his blacks because they're the small. So his lowest is going to be 6. Over here, this player has 13 black, 17 red, 4 blue, and 2 green. So we're going to change that to 5, or 4 actually, is going to be his lowest. And this player has 12 black, 6 red, 6 green, and 8 blue. So his lowest is going to be 7. And that's enough to win because this player's lowest was 6.
Tigris and Euphrates can be 2 to 4 players, but I really enjoy it with 3 or 4 players just because I feel like the conflict starts right away and it just keeps coming. I really like the conflict in this game. You can, for those of you who aren't big fans of conflict, kind of build in your own area, especially in a 2-player game. If you're playing with somebody that likes to do that as well, you can kind of get away with it. But in a bigger game, the board fills up faster and just more likely people are going to come toward you. But I really enjoy it because it makes for a nice social experience. You know, people kind of go in here, and there's that sort of bluffing element where it's, I could connect these and I could go after that green leader and try to take the treasure all in the same turn. But I don't know how many green tiles he has down there. He hasn't seemed like he's been playing many. and he's making a really weird face at me. But that's what I love about this game. It's one that's a little bit older. It's published in 1997, so it's been around a long time, but it has worn incredibly well on me. It's one I'm going to be playing for a long time. So if you think that sounds like a fun game for you, check it out. It's Tigris and Euphrates.